Well, thanks very much, Shane, for speaking again with Blue Notes. It's actually a very interesting day. You're delivering a presentation on environmental and governance, so-called ESG issues. It's the first time you've done a presentation like this. Why?
That's a really good question, actually. So there's obviously a big movement in society about holding businesses to account to the broad group of stakeholders. And, we've been on that journey for a period of time, particularly around ANZ developing our sense of purpose. And in a conversation I was having with some of our executives, I just reflected on the fact that you think about all the time and effort we go into reporting our financial results. Put a lot of work into it, a lot of analysis, we put on a big show, we get people in, we subject ourselves to questions, we hold ourselves accountable to metrics. Why aren't we doing the same thing for the other stakeholder groups that we look to? And so that's where it came from, and so we're giving it a go today. So we're going to stand ourselves up, hold ourselves accountable for what we've achieved, what we haven't achieved, and share and expose ourselves to scrutiny.
Well, you make the point that all companies spend a huge amount of time on their financials and presentations on their financials. There's a school of thought that said, well, that's exactly right. That's what you should do. You're in the business of making profits for shareholders. Why are you even bothering about these other elements?
Because they're totally aligned. And I think if you want to be in the business of long-term sustainable profitability or shareholder value creation for the long term, you have to be mindful of the impact that you're having on the other parts of the community. Absolutely, whether it's around environmental issues, whether it's around diversity issues, whatever it might be, those things actually impact the long-term viability of your business. Whether it's just discussing your social license to operate, whether it's about attracting great customers who want to work with a company that's socially responsible, whether it's about attracting great people. So there actually is an alignment. I think people sometimes get confused that we do sustainability, for example, at the expense of profits. I don't see it as that. I see them as completely coherently aligned.
And obviously there's an increasing body of credible literature that supports that point of view, and perhaps even more to the point, major investors take ESG extremely seriously now. But it's still a challenge in the sense that financials are by definition quantifiable, and a lot of these measures are not so quantifiable. How do you go about measuring what you're trying to do?
That's a good question too, and that's something we're learning. And actually part of today is to engage in a bit of conversation. So, the people that will be coming along today, many of them are owners of the company, they are shareholders, they're representatives of those groups, but not all of them. But we want to actually engage with them and say, well, what should we be measuring? So there are some that we use. So obviously something like diversity is pretty easy, you can kind of count that. If we look at inclusion of other minorities, that's pretty easy. It's really when you get down into things like, are we behaving well? Our reputation, how would you know that that's a good thing? We have sensitive sector policies about the way we engage, say, in the energy sector to say our involvement should be, improving standards, moving to a low carbon economy. How do you really measure your impact? That's actually quite difficult. And actually, as I say, it's a learning for all of us, but that's what we want to engage in a conversation around.
And there is a publicly available presentation that people can look at around this, but if you were to look at the presentation that's been given, are there highlights in there that you do think sort of highlight what has been going on, and conversely, are there things where you really need to improve?
Yeah, well, so first comment on that bit is it's really important, if we're going to be honest, just like we do with our financials, we say, these are the things we think we've done well, these are the things we don't. We think we've got to do more, and that's what hopefully with that flavour will come through. So what are some of the things we think we did well? We've seen a 1.1% uplift in women in leadership. The absolute number's nowhere near good enough. It's above 32%, but it's a really strong improvement, and we're pretty proud of that, and we've got to really continue that trajectory. So that's one highlight. Two, we have done incredibly well in terms of our commitment towards sustainable finance. We had a $10 billion goal to finance sustainable energy, and we've now lifted that to 15, and actually, not just the goal, but the actual amount we're doing is accelerating, so that feels really, really good. I think those two stand out really well. There's a third, which I'm really proud of in New Zealand, where we've announced we're giving interest-free loans to ANZ mortgage customers for them to damp-proof their housing, which is a particular issue over there. So they're again about sustainable customers. So those, I think, are some of the highlights. Some of the weaknesses we've had, we've learnt how hard it is on some of these issues. So for example, we've been doing some testing around how do we make sure that people use our products responsibly? Credit cards being an obvious one, and in particular people who may have an issue or are struggling with gambling. And how do we do the right thing so that we don't allow them to use our products to get into harm's way? We haven't done as well on that as I would have liked. We would have loved to have been able to kind of solve that, if you will. But we've made really good progress. So I think even the things we've not succeeded on, where we've fallen short, I believe we're making progress. We just got to hold ourselves to account to do it faster.
And you talked about how this is the first, and you want to hear from stakeholders about what they're really interested in. Are stakeholders really interested in this then?
Well, we're getting a good turnout. I mean, I was really interested and surprised to see the number of people. We sent out a lot of invitations, a lot of, very serious people are coming along. So yes, I do. I mean, I spend quite a bit of time, as you know, with investors, and increasingly our big institutional investors have dedicated departments that just talk about governance issues like these and want to know what we're doing. So it is absolutely an increasing trend. It's of interest to most investors that I talk about. It comes up somewhere in the topics of conversation, because there's a very well held or broadly held belief that if you want to build a long-term sustainable company, you have to be respectful and mindful of all stakeholders and not just shareholders in a really narrow sense of, what's my return on equity.
Well, thanks very much, Jane. We'll all watch with interest how the session's gone and get the feedback from the session, and thanks again for your time.
And thank you. And as I said, this is a first for us, and we're committed to do it again if our audience will have us back to hold us to account.